Hello YouTube, welcome back. Now who says you can't grow macadamias in Sydney? Well, actually come to think of it, I'm one of those people. But when I am in Sydney, sometimes I come and check on a street called Owen Street in North Willoughby, where if you come in about halfway down the street, you'll see a couple of macadamia trees as roadside plantings. And I came across these a couple of years ago when I was doing a video just completely at random. And I thought, wow, this is a pretty good roadside planting. Obviously, it can get a bit near the power lines when it grows too tall. But there are two macadamia trees on this street. As you can see, it's not the happiest looking colour, this macadamia. But closer look underneath it, and while there's lots of bare racemes, there's also a few nuts. They're not super big, but geez, they're not bad either. And hard to tell when they're going to fall, because you can't really look at a macadamia nut on a tree and tell by looking at it when it's going to fall. But yeah, there's a couple of nuts there. Tree itself could use some nutrition, and there's a second tree next to it, and perhaps it cross-pollinates with that one, because, you know, trees do need some cross-pollination to get a good crop. And this fella here, just quickly looking at it, I can see a couple of out-of-season nuts, but nothing ready to fall this season. It looks, if anything, like an A4, this tree, particularly from the leaf colour. But there you go. Now, trees like that, of course, won't be contributing to the national crop statistics, because you've got to farm them and give them to nut processors in order for them to contribute to that number. And the Australian Macadamia Society's just come out with their latest bulletin telling us what the forecast is for this year. The Australian Macadamia Handlers Association are predicting a crop of 56,000 tonnes. That's 4,000 less than last year's forecast. But then we didn't make our forecast last year. We came in at about 48,000 tonnes. So there's a more optimistic forecast this year. The head of the AMS is saying that there's improved grower sentiment, whatever that means. I would probably read that as price expectations in the industry. And she also said that it's encouraging to see that inventory levels in the processors is normalising. That is, the processors aren't starting the season with a huge lot of macadamia nuts from the previous season that they haven't sold yet. Now, to some extent, that's understating the equation, because certainly from what I hear, most of the macadamia processors are out of nut, and they really need to attract the growers to them to get the nuts in. You'd think in that sort of situation, they might be a little earlier this year in bringing out their price offerings to macadamia growers, but that's not true. Instead, there's an even more intense game of cat and mouse, and growers are, of course, waiting to see what the best offer is before they commit. And the processors want those commitments, because otherwise they get no nuts to sell, and no nuts to sell means no profit. But there is one early indication. There is a price offer out from a processor up in Gympie, and one of my subscribers was kind enough to send that to me. I would very much like to receive other offers that my subscribers receive, because I can go through the fine print for you, and eventually we'll do a comparison video. That can't come yet. A couple of the other processors I've talked to have said they definitely want to get their price offers out by Easter. But one processor is already receiving early shipments of nuts. So again, we're in this unsatisfactory situation that we've seen in recent years, where they're all delaying coming out with a price, and yet the nuts are starting to come in, and farmers don't know who to ship them to, because they don't know what price they're getting. Legally speaking, it's dreadful, because the title to the nuts, the ownership of the nuts, changes as soon as the processor receives them under these contracts. And so they're completely at the processor's mercy then of what they're going to be paid, because there's no contract to sign. However, we have one offer. This is from CL Max in Gympie. They're relatively small processor. As I understand it, they really just don't do huge, top level processing. They send their nut and shell off to China for the large part. So they're really sort of after nut and shell. Can't show you the full detail on here, but the price everyone looks for, if you're new to this, is the price they will pay for 33% kernel recovery at 10% moisture. And the price they are going to pay this year is $3.10. And it obviously varies either side of that. If you have 40% kernel recovery, you could get $3.76. So there is a little bit of a difference for better quality there. And there are quality bonuses for a low amount of unsound kernel, quality penalties for a certain level of reject, and those are sort of now fairly standard terms in the processor's contracts. There's a particular additional one in this contract, in that what happens is, after they screen out the really small nuts in shell, and these are ones that are less than 17 millimeters across, they actually sort them in terms of how big the nut in shell is. And there is, on a weighting system, a bonus paid if your nuts are over a certain size. Obviously, the Chinese market wants the biggest possible nuts to sell to their customers, because big gives the impression of quality and certainly quantity of kernel. They'll only grade your nuts by size if your kernel recovery testing comes out at 37% or less. But in reality, a lot of growers are going to come in at less than 37%, unless you're entirely growing new varieties that have come out in the last few years. And of course, it'll be a while before that happens, given that most of those plantings haven't matured yet. So, look, the reason I'm putting this video out is that at least someone's made a price offer. And it's a fixed price offer as well, which is unusual. Not for this particular processor. He's always offered a fixed price, apparently. And he always used to pay the whole amount within 45 days. Now he's on an installment plan, but it still pays everything within 90 days of receiving the shipment. And that's relatively quick compared to what we saw from the major processors last year. But it's the amount, I suppose, $3.10, that I'm focusing on for this particular video, because we saw some wild figures bandied about on a private Australian macadamia growers forum. Someone said that there was going to be an offer of $5.65, which nobody really believed. And I could be proven wrong, and gosh, I'd love to be. But it's not really likely to happen. We've heard informal indications of $3.20 from some people from Marquee, which is the largest processor. But again, I'm not going to believe any of that till I see it. And as I said in a couple of videos ago, I think the fine print's going to be the killer in this particular analysis. You're going to start with processors who have very little nut, and I think most of them will be offering a notional price. And if they start getting too much nut for what they need, you'll find that price gets dropped on the grower. So what we're going to be looking for in the coming offers is very specific. The ones to welcome are the fixed price offers, or the ones with early payment, because obviously the earlier the payment, the less chance the processor has of reducing the price on the grower after they've received the nut. And look, there are some other nasties as well. This particular processor likes large nuts and is paying on sizing. We have Marquee, for the first time last year, was introducing a variation for how many whole kernels you had, because obviously as a kernel, it's a more valuable nut for the snacking industry than halves, quarters, crumbs, that sort of thing. So we'll see whether the other smaller processors are following Marquee's lead this year and changing the price based on how many whole kernels you give them. And again, sizing, well, who knows? There's people more interested in nut and shell. people more interested in kernels. But at the end of the day, it all factors into a price. And as far as the farmer's concerned, it's that price that matters more than how the processor ends up selling the nuts. So $3.10, is that going to calm down some of the speculation? I don't know. I suspect there could be higher offers than $3.10, and I think they may be notional price offers, and it might well be, you know, a choice between get a fixed price that you can trust or a notional price that's higher and will be good if it comes through, but you're obviously running a risk that the processor will change the price on you. Still something that I think is legally very dubious, and ethically definitely dubious, given that they're buyers of your crop, not sales agents. However, we'll see what these offers come up with, and obviously I'll do another video and compare them for you. Again, like I said, I would really appreciate people getting in touch if you receive an offer from your regular processor, and if you can email that on to me, I'll include that in my comparison. I did a fairly thorough one last year, but I think this year in particular, it's important for farmers to pull together and do a proper comparison of the offers that are being made to you. Last year was an absolutely horrible year for farmers in terms of the price that was offered, and so this year we want to make it a winner. So that's all the update I have for now. Just thought I'd get this first price offer out to you to start the ball rolling, and I'll talk to you again very soon, and hopefully from up at the farm. Bye for now.